Measuring your heart rate is very important because they can go either lower or higher, and either one can be dangerous. Your heart is supposed to rest between 60 and 100 beats per minute for most people. Anything over 100 is dangerous, and anything under 60 is generally dangerous. But Medical News Today reports that tachycardia, which is basically the faster beating of the heart, like above 100, raises the risk of stroke, cardiac arrest, and death. And it does that quite considerably. So that's definitely something to monitor. The American Heart Association has acknowledged that the narrowing of arteries caused by high blood pressure, which is on the other spectrum, causes blood clots, which a blood clot will create the right environment for tissue death. And tissue death is a heart attack, which I don't have to stress to you the importance of a heart attack, but they are mostly fatal. If that isn't enough evidence for you, cardiologist Luke Laffin said that for 20 millimeters of mercury over 115 millimeters of mercury, for every 20 millimeter increase, your risk for heart attack, stroke, heart failure, and chronic kidney diseases doubles, which is pretty scary considering that a lot of us tend to have higher blood pressure than lower. The Centers for Disease Control have concluded that approximately 1,100 deaths per day are due to high blood pressure and complications thereof, which is again scary because it doesn't feel like it's talked about nearly as much as it should be. Medical News Today has said that there's some underlying conditions that can be treated that you wouldn't know if you weren't monitoring these things, like your heart rate being raised or lowered, or your blood pressure being raised or lowered might be a symptom of an underlying condition that you need to get checked out. Medical News Today said that overactive thyroid glands, reactions to medications, and electrolyte imbalances can contribute to a higher heart rate. And Michigan Medicine said that low thyroid levels and electrolyte imbalances can contribute to a lower heart rate. This can also be a sign of drug interactions. Say you have a medication that affects your heart and then another one that affects something differently, or even affects your heart as well, and they just don't mix well, and that causes your heart to just slow down really fast. If you were monitoring your heart rate, then you would be able to catch that in time so that it doesn't do something really irreparably damage to your organs. Now, it's important for us to acknowledge that once we start monitoring these things, we have to make certain changes. A good change to start with is diet changes, just because that's an area where we have a lot of control. Obviously, financial issues are a problem, but there are some heart-healthy foods that you can incorporate into your diet, such as avocados, high-fiber foods, whole grains, stuff like that. It doesn't have to be nasty stuff. There's a lot of good things you can have. Just avoid saturated fats and processed foods. Moderate your drinking and your smoking, just because they're both linked to blood pressure issues and heart rate issues. If you are a heavy smoker or drinker, though, it is recommended that you gradually, slowly taper off your habit. The Mayo Clinic says that 3 or more drinks in one sitting will temporarily increase your blood pressure, but repeated binge drinking and stuff like that will result in a long-term increase. And if you are trying to go cold turkey off of such a binging lifestyle, it can cause a spike in your blood pressure, which is really dangerous. Another thing to monitor is your sodium intake. Sodium can do a weird balancing effect. You need sodium for your heart rate to be low, but you need to lower your sodium for your blood pressure to stabilize, because it will raise blood pressure. So again, you have to monitor. It's key to monitor. Another thing that's important is to drink lots of water and caffeine-free sodas, drinks, teas. A lot of people don't know that, a lot of people say that stimulants are responsible for heart rate problems. And that's true, but a lot of people don't understand that caffeine is the #1 stimulant in America. Like, a lot of people don't acknowledge that, but it is. So it's best to cut down your intake of caffeine if you are worried about your heart rate. Measure your pulse often. I'm going to demonstrate to you now how to do it by your wrist. What you're going to do is you're going to take 2 fingers You're going to put them between your radial artery and your bone in the middle of your arm. And you're going to count for 15 seconds. I'm going to have my assistant do it, and you count the beats. Okay, and I've counted 18. You're going to multiply that number by 4. So 18 beats by 4 is 72. So my heart rate is a little low, right? Like it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's low for me, but that's good. And that's just one way of taking your blood pressure. You can also take your blood pressure by a monitor, and that's really nifty to have around. They also come with heart rate monitors as well, in most of them. You can buy a cheap one at Walmart for $25, and if you can't afford that, they have free stations at Walmart where you can measure not only your blood pressure, but your heart rate. So I fully suggest taking advantage of that if you are not able to afford one yourself. To conclude, it is very important to monitor your blood pressure and heart rate. I know it might seem tedious, but it can really make the difference between life and death, because blood pressure and heart rate both can change incredibly quickly, and it's just something that it's not worth losing your life over. Thank you for listening.